All right, hey everybody, TG here. Let's make sure everything up and running. Looks like we should be good in the Moxie room. Then we're also on YouTube and Facebook and maybe somewhere else out there too. We'll see what the internet does for us. All right, thank you, Mirza. Looks like we're good to go. And for the last, let's hide that. For the last newsletter that I put out, basically calling it Earnings Bonanza, because that's kind of what we've been seeing. Now, it's still a bit of a minefield out there. In fact, I'll show you a couple tickers that have been up and down. So, unless you can play some sort of earning strategy with options and doing some sort of vol crush, it's really kind of been hit or miss. There have been really not much consistency as to what stocks have been doing well or not well for earnings. So I avoid earnings. I don't have an advantage as far as that goes with just stock. It's a complete roll of the dice. So really, for anything that has earnings, I just have to wait. I can trade up to it, or I can trade right after it. And so there just haven't been too many opportunities with that. So we'll be kind of just straightforward with that. So yeah, let's kind of dive into a few things. The other thing to mention, if anybody is going through their conversion with the TD Ameritrade Thinkorswim over to the Schwab Thinkorswim, make sure you save your stuff. I figured that they're doing everything at once, but there's a chance that they might be doing this kind of as a rolling situation for anybody who else might be doing their certain groups they'll have, so they don't have all problems all at once. But make sure you save your watch lists, your indicators, your setups, all these things. You can save them as hyperlinks. And then what you do is you can put that into a Word or a note file or something like that so you can get them converted over. And it might take a day or two for all that to kind of work. I know for me, it took the weekend. And then one of the things didn't transfer, like all my watch lists didn't transfer. So I had to reach out to their chat support, which I got to admit, they were pretty good about it. But I had to talk to three different people over the course of 2 or 3 days. And it took a couple days for this to actually happen, but I did get them, so that's nice. At least not all is lost, and it's nice to see that they were on top of things. So, where are we with this market? Well, I want to show you a couple things. If we look at just the S&P, and then if we also look at the Nasdaq, what it's showing us is that it's basically the Magnificent Seven, right? The mega caps that are holding the market up right now. Yes, of course, there are little stocks that have been popping. I'll show you quite a few of those that have been up on earnings, and then some that have not been. But what we can see is just this market is still really, really overbought. I mean, there is a giant gap here. You can see we've had a gap here before. And, I'd really would like to lean towards the idea that this really is a new bull, at least a bull run. I don't know if I'm going to call it a market, but, a new bull run. And so if that happens, we can't just go chase this first move. We need to actually have this prove itself. And that's kind of where we're at right now is we need to see the proof. You know, a massive short squeeze is easy, but proving it is a little bit more difficult. Let me kind of show you what that looks like. If we look back here and we go, I mean, how many times have we seen this? And I don't even just mean over the last 3 months. I mean, we've seen this short squeeze. Yeah, we could see that was a short squeeze too, but that was a pretty good run. And then even here and here and here, we've seen so many moves over the last 2 years that the market has moved up and then just rolled over. So what we need to actually see is a pullback, and we need to see that pullback hold, and we need to see broader base confirmation of that kind of support. Now, again, I'm leaning that direction because I think that this was a fairly constructive, as it turns out, 10% correction. You can see roughly here to here about 10%. And we pulled back into some major moving averages. You could also see we pulled back into this major level right here. So a lot of things lined up with this. You could also see we were at the lower channel. The put call ratio was super high. I mean, just so many things. And when I was at the money show, I guess 2 weekends ago, that was what my presentation was about, is saying that, look, I know that this market looks terrible, and it has been for the last 3 months, and I'm looking forward to finally turn around. At the time, we hadn't seen the trigger. It basically happened right after I got back from the money show. But I was showing all these different things and indications saying, yeah, I'd really be careful on the short side, and I'm looking for something to actually spring to life. Sure enough, it happened over FOMC, so that kind of threw things off a little bit. And then, of course, it happened during earnings season. And now let me show you. Oh, let me just show you one thing real quick, and then I'll get back into kind of showing you the differences between the indexes and the equal weight. And I was just talking to another trader friend of mine, but like, look at Roblox. Roblox, was looking good for a while, and then it just rolled over and died, and then even just got murdered even more for earnings. But then now look, it turned around again, and now it's up on earnings. Like, hello, welcome to this market that still, for some of these names, can't quite find a trend, and it's one way versus than the other. This is why I don't like to trade earnings. You just never know what's going to happen, which way or another. You want to see another one that was pretty crazy. Look at Alto. And now I've never traded this name, but it was looking pretty good. And it had a very nice breakout right up over here. And now, honestly, everything looked good until earnings. So, even though this might be one every 10 stocks that just does something like this, I think those numbers are significantly higher. But I was just going to say, if it is 1 in 10 stocks and I see something like this, it makes me want to just avoid trading earnings altogether because the time you step on a landmine like this, it's going to really blow up your account, and that's going to be harder to recover from than the couple of good ones that did work out. Something like this that if you were in it takes you down 60%. You got to have quite a few good ones to compensate for that. So I rather avoid the pain and miss out on the gain, that kind of stuff. So that's the direction that I lean with this things. Now let me come back over here and let me show you a couple interesting things. Now looking at the Nasdaq has been the strongest, and looking at this, we're thinking, okay, how is this thing still up? It's been doing pretty well, and okay, was this going to finally roll over? Like, what's going on with this? You can see that the momentum has definitely started shifting. You can see it just hasn't really been going up as far, and even today we're down. Moxie indicator has been trending down. It's just very, very, very extended. Now check this out. You look at the QQQ versus the QQQE, which is the equal weight, and it paints a radically different story, doesn't it? And in fact, this morning, which was another clue that it was telling me that this market was likely to start moving down today, was that the QQQE actually opened up down and continued to drift down despite whatever the QQQ did. So this is telling us that only, the 3, 5, 7 stocks that are holding up the market versus the rest of the market. And you can see that the QQQE really from one day to another barely went higher, and that's telling you that the majority of names are not participating anymore in this kind of move. And you can see we ran right up into this upper channel, not to mention we are pretty far away from this moving average support. So we need to see these things come back down. I'm not saying that everything's going to fall apart. We don't know that yet. I don't know how far this pullback is going to go. I have my ideas and kind of my general targets. But once that pullback happens, I'd really, really, really would like to lean to the upside. But we're going to have to wait and see for that to happen. That's kind of the thing. We gotta wait, and this is not a place to go chase it to the long side. So then let me show you. Oh, let me show you one more thing. If you look at the RSP, I do find this interesting. The RSP looks more like the IWM. So you take the S&P, you take out the Magnificent Seven, and it actually looks closer to the small caps than it does anything else. So look at the RSP. You can see this thing is about to break off of the hourly 21 as price is getting rejected by the 15-minute 50. And boy, doesn't that look a lot like the IWM? Yeah. So you can see, that thing popped up and faded. So this is more of what I was expecting the market to do a little bit sooner. But with the Magnificent Seven, the market's been kind of just pushing up a little bit. So yes, they will eventually succumb to it as well. The question is kind of how far will they go? And this has all been fairly predictable. This is what we were looking for. It's taken a few days to happen, but this is the thing. We wanted to see price start to come back to these moving averages. I mean, remember, those of you who are in the Moxie room, you guys know that this is the first move, and now we're waiting for the second move to continue to work out and develop and that kind of thing. So let me show you some. Let's see, LZ just had that. That's looking decent. It's been put in a base like this and looks like it wanted to start moving up. It has looked good from a technical standpoint, and then it had earnings and it shot up a little bit more. Great. Now we just have to see if this name is going to continue to be strong into the future. Again, pullbacks are reasonable. Let's see if those pullbacks find some support. But again, I had to wait till after earnings for something like this. And then you can look at ENVX. This one up on earnings, but man, there was really not much to do about this thing until it turned around on earnings. I mean, it barely gave you a little bit of a heads up right there. But other than that, again, I just cannot trust these things going into earnings because you just never know what's going to happen. But there has been no trade, absolutely no trade on the long side for ENVX until we finally got earnings on this. And then even at that, we still have to see if price is going to prove itself. Riot just had earnings, which was kind of a nothing burger as far as the response. It's been going down a little bit, but that's also what we've been expecting. I've been expecting price to pull back from here and to pull back from here. And now we need to see if these pullbacks are eventually going to find some support. You could also look at coin. Coin has been up, but again, didn't want to chase it because basically right up beginning, we'll see, right into earnings, it kind of did lift. But again, this is not a place. I don't want to chase it right here. I don't want to chase it right here. So I'm going to see if it'll flag or if it's going to dip a little bit into support and give us a better opportunity to get in something like that. So that kind of takes us with the cryptos. And then if you want to see some names that didn't do well, how about UPST? And this one actually looks like some of the other names where you could have had that argument where, oh, maybe it's kind of trying to put in a base here, or look, it was starting to go up into earnings and then they drop it. So this is the thing, like you have no idea which way this is going to go. And the only way you can trade something like this is maybe with options on a vol crush situation. But other than that, nothing's really been kind of happening here as far as earnings. It's a roll of the dice. So yeah, Upstart is Upstart is down on that one. It's a down start, and then CFLT. This is another one. This one at least did go in the direction of the technicals. I mean, it was a downtrend and it continued its downtrend. So there was no reason to ever be long in something like this. And then there you go. There's your big drop to the downside. So that was CFLT, and then VSTO. And this one, I think actually, this looks more like a pre-release. Some news must have gotten out. They totally dropped that one ahead of earnings. So I think that was probably the situation. And then there was another one, ACHO, or is it AHCO? I'm going to have to figure out which one that one was. There was another name that was looking decent, and then they dropped it into earnings. Yeah, you can just see even just previously, someone totally dropped into earnings, and then just kind of nothing right here. So yeah, still challenging, still a little bit mixed out there, and trying to find ones that are going to be good. It's either you kind of stick with the mega caps or you stick with the indexes. You can trade the leverage ETFs of the indices, or you find a name that's doing well, like one of the mega cap stocks, and you just find an entry. And right now, it's hard to really chase these things. I mean, Apple, great move. Okay. Again, spiked on, well, actually, it moved into earnings, dropped earnings, and then continued for a little bit. That's fine. It was pretty much a 15-minute time frame trade. You can see here how it followed the 15-minute time frame very, very well. But that's now made it very extended here on the daily and hourly time frame, which means if we're going to be looking for a longer term move, we've got to wait for a pullback. You just can't go chase these things up here. It's just not a reasonable place to go get them. Another way to look at this, you could look at FNGU, so the leveraged ETF of the FANG stocks. Same kind of deal. It's followed the 15-minute time frame very nicely, but that's left it vulnerable on something like the hourly and the daily. So kind of just biding our time, twiddling our thumbs, trying to just wait for this market to pull back and see if it's going to give us a good entry. Now, remember, just in case this market is not strong, we need to be aware that a pullback could get worse. And hopefully it doesn't make it too difficult on us like here, where you can see we did have a pullback that then looked good, only to then roll over. So we want to see if something like this, if we get a dip and then this, and then it comes back up, that's going to be fantastic. But we need to be careful that it doesn't go the other direction. So we just got to wait a little bit for this pullback. And this is what I did. I had a video, it got out late, but basically the story is the same. So that's nice. But on stockcharts.com, you guys can go check out their YouTube video. They just posted it yesterday. And really, this is all the same stuff that we were talking about at the money show. Like, okay, I know it's looking really bad out there. I know the market's pretty rough, but I think we're getting to a point where everything is spring loaded to the upside. We're just looking for that trigger. And as I said, unfortunately, that trigger happened with the FOMC, and the trigger happened with a bunch of earnings plays that happened this week. So just going to have to let things kind of settle down and make sure this stuff actually actually continues to work out to the upside. Let's see, SOXX, those semis, this is another one that I'm interested eventually on the long side, but you can see, just kind of wash, rinse, repeat. Why am I not interested at buying it up here? Because yes, it's at resistance. Now, could it kind of hover here and then move up? Sure, absolutely. But that still means I don't want to buy it here. We're going to have to wait for it to come down a little bit or go sideways in order to find some support in order for us to go up like that. So just gonna have to be a little bit patient on these things. And remember, part of the reason why this started doing this is because if you look at the TNX and you come over here, you can see that the TNX and the TLT inversely, we're just getting overbought. And you can see, and this is something again I was talking about. We discussed this at the Money Show in Orlando 2 weekends ago, and then we were talking about this over the last few weeks in the Moxie room. So kind of saw this stuff coming. That was the whole point of just saying, look, I know the market's been rough. It's been 3 months. Trust me, it's been taking some time, but we're starting to see things that look like they're starting to change, and that's going to give a different direction for the market. We can even see that the Dixie, the dollar, started to roll over. And this is something that I wanted to show as well. The Moxie indicator really called this one. Notice how the Moxie indicator is below zero, has been below zero this entire time. So what does that say? Number one, I call that an inverse trampoline move. Price should not be over the 50 if the Moxie indicator is below zero. And so even though you look at the dollar and you see price coming in here, you've got the 8 over the 21, maybe it looks like price is going to bounce off of the daily 50. And this is getting real close to looking pretty good. If you didn't have the Moxie indicator, you'd be looking at something like this and be like, hey, that's actually looking great. It's bouncing off some major moving averages. It's coming up here. It looks like it's going to keep going and breaking out. And what happens? Not only does it get stuffed right at the double top, there was such a clear heads up on the Moxie indicator. It was never over zero. It never actually fired long. And that was telling you that these moves up here, price being over the hourly 50, they were basically false moves. They shouldn't exist up there. And case in point, that's what happened. So we got the dollar to drop. You can see we suddenly got the 8 crossing below the 21, and now we have price below the 50. So at that point, it happened very quickly. The Moxie indicator told you days, if not a couple weeks ahead of time, that this was going to be a problem, at least on the long side. And what was another reason? So this is what I was looking at to the downside. I was looking for the dollar to finally break along with the TNX to break, and that should help the market. And it all happened all at once last week. So I think we have a fair amount of fuel that is fueling the market. That's why I'm saying I would really, really like to lean to the upside for this market, but you just can't do it right here, right now. You're gonna have to be a little bit patient. So right here, right now is not the place to get long. We are expecting a pullback of some sort, maybe a bit of a flag, but there's still a pullback involved with the flag. And so we're going to have to see if we can start kind of closing in on some of these gaps. But then just be careful. I wouldn't necessarily be bearish on these things. We're just kind of looking for a pullback. All right, guys. Well, these are all the things that I talk about in the Moxie room. I give a really great play-by-play every morning, kind of throughout the day. People ask questions. I'm on the mic most days, a couple times a day, So come on in. We met a lot of people at the Money Show. It was pretty great, getting my name out there, and I had a lot of people really compliment me on the presentation that I give. So I try to take that vibe, that energy, and that kind of knowledge, and I put it into the Moxie Trader room. And so if you guys enjoy that, come on over. You can see the kind of alerts and education that I put out there, and hopefully that'll help you get a leg up with your trading. All right, guys. Thanks again. And for those in the Moxie room, I'll be in the options room and Moxie in about 40 minutes. So we'll see you guys there. Thanks.